Hi guys, welcome all replay viewers. Hi guys, thank you for joining. My name is Cindy from Nothing Personal. Hi, thank you for joining me again. Thank you for the hearts. Hi guys, thanks for joining. This is Cindy from Nothing Personal for the second time. You know what? Hey, thank you for joining. This is Cindy from Nothing Personal. My blog is nothing-personal.com. You guys, this is take 2. This is ridiculous. You know what? I think every week I'm just going to make it 2 parts. I'm just going to do half of it, and then I'm just going to cut it and just do another part. Thank you for joining again. I don't know what happened. Every time I get ready to say something important, my video always cuts off. So I'm going to let a couple more people join in the room, and I hope everybody comes back that was here. Thank you for the hearts. Send lots of them because this is part 2. Whatever. All right, so let me recap a little bit what I was saying in the last one. Hi, thank you for joining. Hi, thank you for joining. My name is Cindy. My blog is Nothing Personal. I am going to do a message today from the Apocrypha, the lost book that is not lost, is found. Hi, honey. Thank you for joining. Give your mama some hearts, girl. All right, so let's try this again. So I'm going to recap a little bit, then we'll jump right in. And the last little part before I got cut off, like I always get cut off. I get cut off every week when I get ready to say something important, But I was just praying over everyone that doors will be open for you and that the doors that aren't meant for you will be closed, because I don't know about you all, but I'm at a point in my life to where I'm at a weighing option of a lot of great opportunities are presented to me, but I want to make sure that I'm within God's will and that I'm making the right choice or indecision. So if you guys are at that place, I'm praying with you. I'm in agreement with you. Please pray. Please be in agreement with me. And I pray that you'll make the right decision. So we're going to jump in the book of Esdras from the Apocrypha, and I will tell you why. First of all, this is so ridiculous. All right, so as I was saying last time, thank you, Darnell. All right, so this is the New Oxford Annotated Bible with the Apocrypha. So this is a Bible, but it's with the Apocrypha. And so what I was saying last time is you guys can go online to eBay, Amazon. You can go to thriftbooks.com, and you can get this Apocrypha for $5. That's it. $5, and this knowledge that's in this book is needed for this time and this generation, and once I get into it, you'll understand why. So, without further ado, before we jump into the apocryphic books, I think I said it right, we're going to go back to the Old Testament, to the book of Joshua. So, if you guys will follow me to Joshua 5. All right. Did I have a... Oh, there we go. Okay. So Joshua 5, verse 6, we're going to jump in and then... So we're going to read from Joshua 5, 6, and then we're going to the book of 2nd Esdras, because 2nd Esdras will talk about the generation. So just a little context from Joshua 5, 6. So this is the children of Israel wandering in the wilderness. I'm just going to read a verse, then I'm going to fill you in, then we'll jump forward. Let's go. All right, so Joshua 5, verse 6. For the Israelites traveled 40 years in the wilderness until all the nation, the warriors who came out of Egypt, perished, not having listened to the voice of the Lord. Nora. To them the Lord swore that he would not let them see the land that he had sworn to their ancestors to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So it was their children whom he raised up in their place that Joshua circumcised, for they were uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. Okay, let me read that one more time and then I'll put it in modern day terms. All right, so Joshua 5, verse 6. For the Israelites traveled 40 years in the wilderness until all the nation, the warriors who came out of Egypt, perished, not having listened to the voice of the Lord. To them the Lord swore that he would not let them see the land that he sworn to their ancestors to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So it was their children whom he raised up in their place that Joshua circumcised, for they were uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. All right. Thank you for coming back. I had to start over. All right, so that was Joshua 5, verse 6. So this context is talking about the children of Israel, and they're wandering around the wilderness for 40 years, and why they were wandering around the wilderness for 40 years. All right, first of all, when they left Egypt, God had promised to take them to a land flowing with milk and honey. I feel like this is a bedtime story. But God had promised to take them to a land flowing with milk and honey. Along the way, God showed them so many wonders and so many miracles, but they still did not believe. Their minds were still stuck in Egypt. They still had a slave mentality. You got to remember that now. These people, these children of Israel, were slaves most of their life. Like, all they knew was how to be a slave. So as they're departing the land of Egypt, God rescued them. He did everything he said he was going to do. He saved them, freed them from Pharaoh. Pharaoh let them go. He did everything that he said he was going to do. And the children of Israel still had a slave mentality that they could not free themselves from. So even though they were physically free, they were mentally still enslaved to Egypt. I mean, 5 minutes without a little bit of water and they're freaking out, like, oh my gosh, like, we're gonna die here. Let's go back to Egypt. Let's just go back to being slave. There's even a point to where they even considered going back and being a slave. So if you guys will jump, if you have an Apocrypha, to the book of Esdras, and I'm going to tell you how this generation is comparable to that one. And this is 2nd Esdras. All right. Okay. All right, so just keep that in mind from Joshua and about the children of Israel. And so what God did was allow them to travel in the wilderness for 40 years. And when it says circumcised and uncircumcised, it's talking about their minds. He pretty much let them travel in the wilderness for 40 years because that generation had to die off, so that the generation that hadn't been enslaved, that hadn't known slavery, could rise up and begin to receive what God was giving them, so that they could take over and enter into the promised land. So that is why they wandered the wilderness for 40 years, for generations to die off. So what I believe is happening right now in our time, 2016, is that this same type of thing is happening to the generations. I feel as though this new millennium, and mind you, my generation, I'm in my 30s, okay? So my generation are those 80s babies, the millennium graduates. So that's my generation, and I believe that this generation is the one that God is preparing to lead the way into the promised land for the next generation, for our children and our grandchildren. So let me show you guys in Esdras and compare it in context to Joshua of why I believe that our generation are the ones called. So just as in those days in Egypt, God had to wait 40 years for that generation to die off to free them of this slave mentality, I believe that same thing is happening now. And the way that we can see this now is by the way our parents, not even our parents, more so as much as our grandparents, mind you, I'm talking about my generation in my 30s, my grandparents, that generation, so like two generations ago, the mentality and the way they think. Okay, so a lot of our grandparents are the ones saying, you know, what's wrong with you new people, you new children nowadays, you just want to leave a job and hop around and try to start your own things. And all I hear my grandmother saying is, my generation, what we did was you get on a job, you work 30 years, you retire, and you get some benefits. That's what you do. Well, that is a slave mentality. That is a slave mindset. So when you hear those generations saying, you stay on your job 30 years and, yada, 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 that's a slave mindset, and they cannot grips when they have a grandchild or children that want to be entrepreneurs, that want to do their own thing, pursue their own careers. So, don't feel like you're the only one. And this is definitely not just myself. This is our entire generation and the generations that we're leading into the promised land, that feel this way. This generation, especially behind us, they have their own ideas, their own thoughts. They're creative. They want to be entrepreneurs. They want to be business owners. They want to do all these things. But mind you, that last generation is telling us, like, what are you guys doing? Are you crazy? You go to college, you find you a job, you work for 30 years, and you retire, and you live off your retirement. That's all you do. Well, that is a modern day slave mentality type thinking. And what I believe is that God allowed that generation to die off. The same scenario, because remember, there's nothing new under the sun. And history repeats itself. So what happens will happen again. So just as when he freed the Israelites from Egypt, just as he allowed them to wander in the wilderness for 40 years because they couldn't loose that slave mentality, the same thing is happening in our realm today within the generations. So the mindset of our grandparents of, you work, you do this, you do that, that mentality or type of thinking, which is, in a way, like I don't want to bash or say anything bad, but in a way, it is a slave type of thinking, because it's a system that they've gotten used to that worked for them. And by all means, it worked for them. My grandmother is happy living at home with her retirement, relaxing, enjoying life right now. So it did work for them, but God is breaking us from that type of mindset and preparing a new generation to rise up and go forth. So that is what I believe is happening now. And I believe that, it not necessarily 40 years, but the time has lapsed and this new generation is coming about. So I believe my generation is the generation that God has set to enter into the promised land, to pave the way for this generation behind us. And that's why we have a whole wave of new thinkers. So with that being said, I want to show a little bit of context from the Apocrypha of why I believe that and what God is saying to Esdras about the generations to come. All right, so this is from 2nd Esdras. It might be a little long tonight because I'm always getting cut off. Okay. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about Esdras, because I know the Apocrypha might be a little scarce for now, because I believe everybody should get their hands on it. I told you can go to thriftbooks.com, you can go to eBay, you can go to Amazon, you can get this book for $5. It is a must for our time. It is a must for our generation. It is a must for now and what is happening, because we are, again, as I said, in end times. All right, so we're in 2nd Esdras. We are in chapter 5. So what's going on here? Esdras is talking to God, and he's frustrated. He's like, God, if you're going to judge us and, a judgment is coming, why you just don't create who you're going to create, judge them, and call it a day? Why must we wait 70,000 years and this and that, or however long of a time before we receive your judgment? And why must we wait knowing that judgment is to come? So basically, Esdras is keeping it real. He's frustrated and he's talking to God about his frustration. So God answers Esdras, but how he says it is quite remarkable and quite on time to now. So I want to read that in context to what we just said about Joshua, to what we just said about the generations, and to what we just said about slave mentality. So follow along. And this is Esdras talking to God, and this is God answering Esdras. All right, so I'm going to read a little bit so you guys can context. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 5, verse 28. And now, O Lord, why have you handed the one over to many and dishonored the one root beyond the others, and scattered your only one among the many? And those who opposed your promises have trampled on those who believe your covenants. If you really hate your people, they should be punished at your hands. When I had spoken these words, the angel who had come to me on a previous night was sent to me. He said to me, listen to me and I will instruct you. Pay attention to me and I will tell you more. So real quick, and thanks for the hearts. So real quick, so this is Esdras pretty much saying, God, why must we wait this long for your judgment? And why do you got these people who are sinning just look like they are coming up in the world? They look like they have all the nicest things, that, everything is working in their favor, but yet the people of God, the people who believe in your covenant, the people who believe in you are being trampled on. He's frustrated and he's talking to God. So God sends him the same angel that he sent the night before, and this is what the angel says. Then I said, speak, my Lord. And he said to me, are you greatly disturbed in mind over Israel, or do you love him more than his maker does? I said, no, my Lord, but because of my grief I have spoken. For every hour I suffer agonies of heart, while I strive to understand the way of the Most High, and to search out some part of his judgment. He said to me, you cannot. And I said, why not, my Lord? Why then was I born? Or why did my mother's womb not become my grave, so that I would not see the travail of Jacob and the exhaustion of the people of Israel? So he's frustrated. He's like, well, what's the point? Like, why you just didn't take me out before I was even born? Like, why must I go through this? And he said, count up for me those who have not yet come. So I'm going to skip a little bit so that I can stay in context, because the Apocrypha gets deep. So God is pretty much pulling like a Job thing on him, where Job kind of questioned God when all those bad things were happening to him. And God is like, he's pretty much saying, you can't question me. Like, who made the stars? Who did this? So he's kind of just telling him that right now, and just helping him understand how sovereign he is. And then he gets into, we'll skip a couple verses. He said to me, just as you cannot do one of the things that were mentioned, so you cannot discover my judgment of the goal of the love that I have for my people, my promise to my people. I said, yet, O Lord, you have charge of those who are alive at the end. But what will those do who lived before me, or we ourselves, or those to come do after us? He said to me, I shall liken my judgment to a circle. Just as for those who are last there is no slowness, for those who are first there is no haste. So right here at this point, God is talking about the generations. So for the longest time, I know you guys have heard the scripture, the first will be last, the last will be first. Well, in this context, out of context, I've always thought that meant the poor, the people who are lowly. God will raise them up, and, they will be able to be first and lead first. But the revelation that I got from the Apocrypha is meant about the generations. And God is saying this last generation will be first, and the first generations will be last. So he's pretty much saying this last generation, I'm going to rise up first. and the first generations will be the last to be judged. So he's saying, I shall liken my judgment to a circle. Just as for those who are last there is no slowness, so for those who are first there is no haste. So for our generation, things are going to start to come quickly. They're going to unravel quickly. We're going to see things change before our eyes. We're going to see the times change before our eyes. We're going to see people accepting things that they would not normally accept before our eyes. Everything is going to speedily come. But for the generations past, there was no haste. Everything came at a pace. So this is another sign and indication that we are the generation that is closer to those times mentioned by Paul, closer to those times of the end. So I'm going to read a little more into the generations, about the generations. Then I answered and said, could you not have created at one time those who have been and those who are and those who will be, so that you might show your judgment sooner? So again, he's frustrated. Like, why you just didn't make everybody at once and then you could just judge them? And then he replied and said, the creation cannot move faster than the Creator, nor can the world hold at one time those who have been created in it. Let me just go ahead and read all of this. I said, how have you said to your servant that you will certainly give life at one time to your creation? If therefore all creatures will live at one time and the creation will sustain them, it might even now be able to support all of them present at once. So right here he's saying, if you can just make everybody at once and if this is your creation, why can't you just make everybody at once and then your creation can sustain it? You made it. You can make it how you want to make it. He's kind of sideways talking to God, but he's keeping it real. He's keeping it real. And this is what God says. So God says to him, ask a woman's womb and say to it, if you bear 10 children, why not one after the other? Request it therefore to produce 10 at one time. So he's saying, just as a woman has one child at a time, for the most part, each one is produced in its own season. I said, of course it cannot, but only each in its own time. He said to me, even so I have given the womb of the earth to those from whom from time to time are sown in it. For as an infant does not bring forth, and a woman who has become old does not bring forth any longer, so I have made the same rule for the world that I've created. So he's saying here, just as there is a time and a season, just as the same, comparing it to a woman's womb, there's a time and a season that the woman is able to bear kids. She can't bear kids early. She has to wait, until she goes through puberty and her changes. She has to wait to a time before she can bear kids. And then after a certain time, it's cut off. She goes through menopause and she's unable to have kids. So just as within that time, God allows for a woman's womb to bear forth fruit, is the same that God is allowing for the womb of the earth. And this is his answer to Esdras as he questions. So Esdras is still asking more questions. He said, well, you have now given me the opportunity to speak. So, is our mother of whom you have told me still young, or is she now approaching old age? So now he's like, okay, if that rule works, if that's how it's compared, tell me this, God, is the earth or the womb of the earth, is it approaching old age? This is what God says. He replied, ask a woman who bears children and she will tell you. Say to her, why are those whom you have borne recently not like those whom you bore before, but smaller in stature? And she herself will answer you. Those born in strength of youth are different from those born during the time of old age when the womb is failing. Therefore, you also should consider that you or your contemporaries are smaller in stature than those who are before you, and those who come after you will be smaller than you, as born of a creation that already is aging and passing the strength of youth. All right, so I'm going to stop right there because I do want to stick to the generations, and the Apocrypha can get so deep so quick, and it'll just go there. But so what God is saying here is, just as a child is different to a woman born in her youth than a child is to a woman born from a woman in her older age. So, oh, good night. I love you, Pooh. Tune in. This will be posted on YouTube, and I'm almost at the end. Love you. So pretty much what this is saying here is that the children born at different seasons of a woman's life, or at the earth's womb's time, they're different types of children that are born. So he's saying, you know, this generation that is born towards the end of the earth's womb, or the earth's time, is going to be different in stature than the generation born at the earlier time of the earth's womb. So I'm going to read that one more time. Okay. So ask a woman who bears children, and she will tell you. Say to her, why are those whom you have recently born not like those who you bore before, but smaller in stature? So why are they different? You know, women who have children at an older age, there are different complications that come about. You know, there are different things that could happen. And they also even raise the children differently because they're at an older age. So they're wiser. They think differently. So that's what he's saying here. She herself will answer you. Those born in the strength of youth are different from those born during the time of old age, when the womb is failing. Therefore, you also should consider that you or your contemporaries are smaller in stature than those who are before you, and those who come after you will be smaller than you, as born of a creation that is already aging and passing the strength of youth. So this generation that is to come, I have one more thing to share too. Oh yeah. Oh, it gets too deep. Okay. So this generation that is to come, they're going to be different in stature than the generation before them. They're going to think differently, but also things are going to be fast paced for them. It's going to come fast. Everything is going to be fast, 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 because their time has changed. Their time is limited. You know, sad to say, they're not going to have the time to prepare and plan out and just do everything as that generation before them. So, oh, this is sorry guys, the Apocrypha really goes. So therefore, this is what I believe is going on in this season. And you guys, I would really recommend you get the Apocrypha, read 2nd Esdras in context, because it just keeps going. It gets deeper and deeper and deeper. But before I close out, I just want to say that I really believe that our generation is the generation that God has called, God has chosen, God has predestined before we were even born, before time even began. He had a set time for us and our generation. And I believe that the time is now, and that God has prepared our generation to be the ones to enter into the promised land and to pave the way for the generation behind us. So with that being said, I just want you guys to pray, meditate on that, and just see what it is that God is calling you to do. Because our job is to prepare and plan for that next generation. All right, we will get deeper and deeper into this. And there's more to come. I think there'll actually be a part 2 on this. This is already take 2 because I was cut. But With that being said, I am out. Remember, there is a spiritual battle behind every single thing that you face in the natural. Best believe something is going on in the spiritual. And this week, and I guess till the end of this month, I pray that God will give you wisdom and discernment to make the right choice and decision, because He's laying a lot of things out for us. He's laying a lot of things out for you. And I just pray that you'll be able to discern what's for you and what's not for you, because every good thing is not a blessing. So I pray that God will give you wisdom and discernment in that area as He opens new doors for you. May you be blessed, and I will see you next Thursday at 11:11, if not Sunday. So try to tune in Sunday to catch us. We'll be at the distillery. If not, I will see you next Thursday at 11:11. Remember, it's all spiritual, nothing personal. Write me, because I want you to give me your questions or comments. Write me at info@nothing-personal.com. Visit online at nothing-personal.com. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all the hearts. Thank you for sharing the broadcast. I guess that's about it. The video will post on YouTube now. There's no more catch. So it will post on YouTube tomorrow. And I thank you for joining. It's spiritual, nothing personal. Good night, guys. Have a great night. Love ya.